Hey everybody, what is going on? Welcome into Real Friends, episode 5. It's a very special episode. Sorry if I lost my voice. I was doing quite a lot of yelling the LSU football game the day before we filmed this, but I'm your host, T-Bob Aber, one of your hosts, joined by Nathan Velasquez on my right, a resident movie nerd, and the wonderful Mr. Rivers Huey. Of course, we all do Off the Bench together on 104.5 ESPN, and then we do this show to get to talk movies a little bit every week. And behind the glass, we got our man Joe Rodriguez making sure that all the video angles and audio are the absolute best.
Making me look very good today.
Yeah, great lighting.
After a day of tailgating and late night.
Ooh, I don't know if it's possible for me to look good today. I had a lot of fun yesterday, but I'm going to have a lot of fun today as well, mainly because this is a very special episode. That's right, we are talking Star Wars with The Last Jedi about to come out in just a couple more weeks now. We are giving you 2 Star Wars themed episodes. We split up the 7 movies into the Machete order. Today, we're talking episode 4, A New Hope, 5, Empire Strikes Back, and then we add to the prequels for episodes 1 and 2. Before we get into it, real quick, what have y'all gone to the theater lately? Have you seen anything lately? What have you been watching?
The last 2 things I saw that I really liked were the 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Did y'all see anything about that?
The what?
3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri.
So very
such a long
Yeah, it is.
It's a very interesting preview. I had no idea what it was actually about.
It's a very, I guess it would take too long to explain. Go see it. It's kind of dark, but it's also very funny. And also Wonder. I saw Wonder.
Ooh, I cried.
I did. I cried 5 times. I counted.
Okay, so I didn't even see
What?
the
I need
movie.
to go see this.
I cried in the
Just
trailer.
the trailer.
The trailer
cried
was
in the
so
trailer.
Calm down. That's something that I would do.
No, it's very touching. It's like
Chewbacca makes an appearance in the movie 3 times.
What?
really
The actual Chewbacca.
like Peter Mayhew
The
or
person who
like
played Chewbacca?
Oh, yeah. It's not like their own version of Chewbacca that they kind of made.
Oh, just
They
him as a
actually-
real person.
Yeah, he's kind of a character in a pretty playful and inventive way.
Ooh, okay, nice.
Yeah, because the kid's
there.
a big Star Wars fan.
Nice tease there. Rivers, you see anything?
Yeah, the last thing I saw was Happy Death Day, which has probably been a few weeks, but it was an excellent movie.
I've heard it was very fun. I
Yeah.
saw maybe not so fun and not so good. The only movie that I saw was Justice League.
You didn't like it?
Which, well, I'm a big DC fanboy kind of growing up. I liked it better than all the other DC movies, save for Wonder Woman. I thought it was very fun, but still very flawed. I think the critics are being a little harsh on it, but
They usually are.
it reportedly though, between the marketing budget and the money they put into it, it is like a comically large flop. So
Oh, yeah. Did you...
I have no idea what to
The only
future
thing
for
I'm
this.
wondering, did you like the little preview that they did for not Justice League, Green Lantern? I thought of you whenever I saw the little
look,
aside they did there.
I don't know if I can trust the Warner Brothers and the DC movie universe right now. Like, after waiting my whole life for a Green Lantern movie that first time around, and as burned as I felt, and then what they've done with these movies, I don't know. Even though, like I said, I thought this was more fun. The Flash, it's probably worth seeing this movie if you like superheroes at all. But let's get into our movies today. And so what we're going to do...
I literally just noticed what you're wearing.
Yeah, he's got the
For
Star
all
Wars.
the listeners, he's wearing a
Star Wars
shirt
on Star Wars.
and a Star Wars button down.
Yeah. I got the button down at Disney in the gift shop. It's like Dad Shirt 101. You got all the different chips on it. And then this was at the New Orleans Comic Con, which is always worth stopping.
Look at that.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, but okay, so let's get into it then. And we're going to start, as we always do, chronologically. So we are going back now 40 years. Seems kind of insane to say that. All the way back to
Whoa, it is 40 years.
1977. Nathan, give us a little background
Well,
on New
really
Hope.
quick,
Oh,
you may
yeah.
want to update our listeners on how we are watching these films.
Oh, yeah,
They may
so-
already know, but if they don't,
Yeah, we're going Star Wars: A New Hope, so episode 4, and then Empire Strikes Back, episode 5. Then we're going back to the prequels after the I Am Your Father, and then we're going to start there with Phantom Menace,
Yep.
onto Attack of the Clones, and that's all we're covering today, just
Yep.
those 4.
And then we will end with episode 3. Then we go back to 6, and then into episode 7. So it's called the Machete Order. I think narratively, we can talk about it, but I think it actually works pretty well. But Nathan, give us a little background on Star Wars: A New Hope.
Star Wars: A New Hope, 1977, written and directed by George Lucas. The story itself is very simple. The galaxy is at war. Empires versus the rebels. Darth Vader is searching for the Death Star plans that have been stolen. The droids that have the plans, C-3PO, R2-D2, have escaped, and they fall into the hands of Luke Skywalker, who meets up with Obi-Wan Kenobi. They then team with Han because they have to go and save Princess Leia, who they saw left a message for them with the plans. And this then catapults them into joining the rebellion against the Empire.
All sorts of antics.
Nice setup there, Nathan.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's talk about, to me, this movie's beginning is so interesting to me. I mean, so I always talk about world building, right? How I like world building, blah, 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 whatever. Y'all know this if you've watched any other episodes. The first 15 minutes of this movie do that so effectively. Think about how weird it would have been to, I feel like in 1977, you sit down to watch this movie, you don't really know what to expect. You have this crazy action scene off the bat where this big guy dressed in black comes bursting on the scene, killing people. But then the next 15 minutes of the movie are spent with two droids, like one of which doesn't even speak English.
Yeah.
And you're going into all these crazy
But you love
settings.
them.
Oh, yes, you absolutely love them. But it's just like, it off the bat is so impactful as to like creating this entire galaxy or universe that they give you very little. They don't go out of the way to explain themselves, but you desperately want to know more about what's going on.
Oh, yeah, I thought, this is probably the fourth time that I've seen it. And I have not, you are clearly, just by talking to you for 5 minutes, you know that you're an ultra Star Wars nerd,
Yeah,
Bob.
yeah.
I'm not a huge nerd, but I mean these movies, this movie in particular, like it builds this world, and it does it so genuinely, and it does it so vividly, like so quickly too, like you said, and that's what's so much fun. Even though I'm not a diehard fan, I can't help but respect this movie in particular, just because with such ease it creates this magnificent world, all these worlds.
Well, now that you've gotten those good things out of the way, let's bring it back down a notch.
Okay, so now, so
Do you know what I'm
Rivers,
about to say?
You are not. What was your kind of general overall vibe with this movie?
I love the movie. I mean, I've been watching these movies since I was little. I remember
Okay,
my
so
parents.
you do have a Star Wars
Yeah,
history.
I remember my parents buying me that like VHS box set.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
where
I
they like
remember that box
remastered
set.
them and
in the
everything.
90s.
Right. So no, I like the movies. I wouldn't call myself a Star Wars nerd, but I have seen them quite a few times. And I don't know, and I didn't really notice this as much the first few times I watched it, or any other time I watched it, really. But
You can see T-Bob gearing up just to...
every time we watch a
we
movie,
kinda
I
talked
find
about
this
it.
one person in the movie. Man, Luke, you are so obnoxious.
Yeah,
Ugh. He almost ruined some of it for me because I was so annoyed. And I think it was one of those things where you start noticing something about someone that does annoy you, and
Yeah.
then you cannot stop noticing.
So what
it.
about Luke annoyed
Just
you?
his voice? He's so whiny and like kind of a little brat.
You're
every...
in Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. It's one
Uncle
of the best
Ben.
lines ever. Come on, don't say that.
on.
When C-3PO's like, I'm doomed, leave me.
It's just that, and it's like
But, okay, now...
he grows up throughout
I-
the movie and the two.
Although
that we
I would have
watch.
to say, I do. Whenever I forgot until he actually spoke, just how funny he is, and I don't know
Yes.
if maybe that was intentional. It feels there. I do feel there are a few missteps in this movie. Luke, he is a little kid, and I don't know if it was supposed to come
I
off
always
as.
remember too, you know, like Leia being with Han and being like, oh, I wonder what that, you know, like decision process was like. Just as a little girl watching the movies, I wasn't thinking about it any other way. But now, as like a grown woman, I watch it and I think, man, I mean, like it's because he seems like such a little boy, you know.
Well, and that's obviously by design.
Right, absolutely. But it's just funny watching it as a grown woman
No,
because I'm
look,
like, wow, there was no chance. He had absolutely no chance.
No, I mean, we could talk about the kiss in Empire between Luke and Leia, which a lot of people think is weird because it ends up being the brother-sister thing.
But at this point, we're fine with incest.
Well, yeah, we
So,
completely as
whatever.
society.
We're
I'm like,
becoming much
whatever.
more progressive as a
Game
nation.
of Thrones.
I'm like, it's
and-
fine.
Yeah, no, everybody's into it now. But the thing about that kiss in Empire that stands out to me even more is just that Leia's trying to tell Han he knows nothing about women while like proving Han that he knows exactly what he's doing with women. But okay, so back to Luke. I agree with you. I do think it's by design. I think that George Lucas, as we will find out, is not the best director of people all the time and kind of getting what he needs out of his actors. And Mark Hamill at that time would have been a pretty inexperienced actor.
And I have here that like
And those were the first scenes
Well,
that they
and
shot.
he
on the
reminded me
movie.
a lot.
Those were the first things they shot on the movie. I'm pretty sure were in
was it?
Tasmania, the desert scenes.
But and maybe this was by design as well, but he reminded me so much of those first few scenes of Hayden Christensen. Like he didn't get on my nerves quite.
Let's hold off to
I
talk
know.
about
But
Hayden
just-
Christensen until we
in
get
ge-
to the prequels.
But just in general, like they reminded me a lot of each
I
other. Maybe
do-
that was by design.
Okay. Yeah, look, I don't want to admit it, but I could see how you could draw that conclusion.
I did, and I think some of the stuff with the actors in particular, Han doesn't have any. I don't think. I think Leia has a few moments that are a little bit irksome.
Yeah.
But I think that, like you said, George Lucas might not be the best director for these. I think he's way better in these movies as a writer and building the world. And I think in this movie in particular, the world is so intoxicating that it's very easy to forgive it for the stuff with Luke
Right.
That's
being a
very well
baby.
said.
I can agree with that.
And
It
just
didn't ruin the movie for me.
No.
For me personally, I do find that while it is, it is. If it's not over the line, even I'll admit it's definitely like walking right on the line of being like a caricature, of being a step too far. And I think you see some characters eventually end up there by the end of this series when you talk about like Jedi Han. But yeah, it still actually it works for me for the most part. But this is a movie in A New Hope where the entire time I feel like you can feel them just kind of getting their feet wet. The story really isn't too ambitious, right? The story's a very basic.
The movie's almost, and
rebellion.
George
rescuing the
Lucas
princess.
talks about that a lot with this movie. That like he's a big believer that there's only like 2 stories, and he really, it's the whole thing about like the back at the ranch thing. Like you just have 2 groups of people, they split up, and he just follows each one every now and then. It's not ambitious in terms of the story at all. Just I guess I now said this like 4 or 5 times.
What year is this again?
But it's well executed.
77. It is very.
It's
yes.
well executed.
Gosh, can you imagine having seen this movie in the theaters when it came out in 77?
Yeah, it would be. And it is a little tough to judge exactly what it had been like because it's literally impossible to get an original cut of the movie. If not, it's
I
impossible
found
through
that
legal
is
means.
very tough to do.
Yeah. No, you got to have like a jailbroken Fire Stick or something. But whatever. So it still either way. I actually went back and watched the original 77 version to get an idea, and it's still pretty mind blowing.
Which but
wise.
imagine just people in 77 not having seen anything like
Yeah.
this. You know, like for us, we could go back and watch the version, the original, but it's still not going to be the same as someone in 1977 going in and like their mind being blown.
And
One
I
of
kind
my-
of I kind of looked up like what other movies were out, and like sci-fi movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, Andromeda, Strand, Solaris, Close Encounters with the Third Kind, and like around that time the space movies were like everything was clean and very pristine, futuristic, and it's really cool. And it must have been very weird this coming out that like space junk all over the place and like these space cowboy
it's a really
type of
good
people.
space junk.
Well,
I
it's
like that.
it's in
Space
line
junk.
with I think it's right in line with George Lucas's kind of upbringing, if his film background where he used to love cars. What's the movie that he did with Harrison? American Graffiti.
Yeah, American Graffiti.
Featured cars prominently.
I haven't seen that
And
yet.
he wanted to kind of bring, I think that, like the same way that you see this greaseball mechanic who's working on his hot rod all the time. There's Han like tinkering and hammering things on the Falcon, just trying to get it ready. Okay, so where do we want to go next with this here?
I think the other things that I love are, because I think there are a lot of movies that have kind of tried to do the world building, especially in space. Like there was that Valerian movie that came out recently, and Jupiter Ascending, and they all seem really silly. And I think we kind of take for granted how much of an achievement this was. Like the fact that there are like 75 different species of aliens all throughout this movie, and
this movie
it
feels
deals
very
with
complicated,
it. So,
but not in a way that I never am watching and like, man, I can't follow this. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But if you really break it down, it's super intricate. I mean, all the worlds and all the stuff that goes. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it does.
That impresses me.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
to the aliens, and I think why a lot of that works is the practical effects and the prosthetics and everything else, and just how good the art that you start with, the concept art, and then how it's executed on screen, just the look of the movie is absolutely beautiful, and the practical effects still hold up to this day, which is something we'll talk about when we get into kind of Yoda CGI versus Yoda as a puppet, which I think the puppet is a bit stronger. Okay, some points from the beginning of this that I find funny. Obi-Wan talking about how accurate the blast points are. This is the first time that we have ever heard of stormtroopers, and Obi-Wan says only Imperial blast points could be that precise, which is hilarious given that throughout the rest of these movies, the stormtroopers do not hit another shot.
Yeah.
Like they are terrible at shooting. I don't know what their training is. And Rogue One, if we really want to be nerdy, Rogue One tries to give you a bit of a lore explanation, but yeah. Other things, the cantina. It's about as real as it gets.
I love the cantina.
Dude
That
gets his
song.
arm cut off. Nobody skips a beat. Greedo gets shot. People are just like,
Love,
oh.
I'm trying to hang out at the
Just
Oh
cantina.
like
yeah,
move
I
on.
love the gangster stuff going on
Yes.
in this movie.
Dude.
How Han
Yes.
Solo's like in with the mob almost. He owes him a bunch of money.
Love it.
Okay, and I know we got to move on to Empire in a second, but I have to bring this up because I think it makes the entire movie weaker. I am still very angry that they went back and added that CGI Jabba scene.
Yeah, that really
It
takes
is
you out
one
of
of
it.
the most. It is one of the most odd, out of place, just like shoehorned. It's
Just
terrible.
ruined the whole movie for you.
It doesn't ruin the whole movie, but I'm not exaggerating when I think it brings the quality of the overall movie down, especially because Jabba is like an outer rim Godfather crime lord. Like he's like when you hear about South American crime lords who have billions of dollars,
Right.
that's who he is.
Yeah.
He's not confronting. He's not traveling to go confront a single
That makes
smuggler.
sense. When you put it that way, that makes
it's
sense. That makes
like
sense.
and then it's a kind of slapsticky, like he steps on Jabba's tail. You don't step on the guy. You don't step on the mob boss's tail. Like that's So I hate that scene. I actually just erase it from my mind and I
Perfect.
pretend like
Let's
it's not
just do
there.
that.
If you're a Star Wars nerd, though, you can look up online. The original footage, they have a human reading as
Yeah,
Jabba,
and he's
it's
Scottish.
and it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
That was
The only
kinda
other
I'm
thing
into that.
we didn't mention Darth Vader at all. I mean,
good, great point.
yeah, I know we need to move on.
No,
but
you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I think the opening is one of the greatest presentations of a villain.
Yeah.
It's incredibly ominous, and I watched the ending of Rogue One again today, and the way that they follow up on that it's really creepy. And I think Darth Vader is like a awesome personification of just evil. Like he just looks
Well,
so
and
terrifying.
so that's
does.
where Vader, and as we'll see throughout this series, I think that's where Vader even gets more interesting, though. He has this very ominous look. He can definitely be perceived as evil by the lengths he's willing to go to accomplish his goals. But in his mind, he's doing it for the right reasons. He still thinks that he's doing it for a galactic peace and to bring order or whatever. But we don't know that off the bat. He does just burst on a scene. Where's the rebellion? Killing people. It's very effective. Look, this movie feels like a theme park ride to me. I think it's a lot of fun from the escape with the princess, the garbage chute, just all the way through, and then ending in the trench run. Like very, very enjoyable. I'm trying to think anything else that we need to point out before we move on. Oh, okay, what did y'all think about Obi-Wan sacrificing himself to Darth Vader? Because this is something that I feel like a lot of people can get a bit hung up on, because he uses that line, if you strike me down now, I'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine.
I thought it was necessary.
Yeah,
I mean, I
me
thought
too.
it also. I mean, I guess do people not like that?
I
Have
know,
you come across people that don't?
A lot of people that I've talked to have kind of put it forward that, well, how could he become more powerful when he just he died?
He died.
I kind of thought that
gone.
I thought because he saw Luke,
Yeah,
and then he gave up. I thought that was kind of like he knew that it was his time to move on, and that helped Luke
Yeah.
move
Absolutely.
on to. Well, that's what I got from it. So I guess I'm kind of surprised people would not.
Get that.
Yeah.
Well, no, and I think that, that's probably because I think if you're looking at it at a surface level, then you might not realize it. Yeah, I think, him being a martyr obviously helped, but then he kind of felt that he could accomplish more beyond his mortal coil. Last thing I'll say about this movie, one thing that separates it from all these other Star Wars movies is that it is maybe the only one that is a truly self-contained story, where you don't have to know anything else about any of the other movies. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, there's payoff, it's a happy ending. It is like a true high-budget, kind of fast-paced thrill ride fairy tale. I really like it.
Well,
That's
then
a
But
big
the whole
fan.
deal was that he was going to do all of them, right? I mean,
I
those
don't
30,
think
right?
it was.
I
Was
don't
it not?
know that I mean,
That was
I'm
one-
trying to remember. I read that Lucas biography, but there was no guarantees that another
Okay.
movie would ever be made.
So
I
they
don't-
needed this one to stand
Yeah,
on
And that's
its
why
own.
I don't think that Star Wars would be what it is if they had just stopped at that one. Like I think Empire Strikes Back, which we can go into right
Yes,
now,
good segue.
solidified, it being the blockbuster it is today. So anyway, Empire Strikes Back,
Ooh, look at
1980,
that.
directed by Irvin Kershner. I did not look up what else he has done, but Lucas only did the story for this one, which important point we can come to. But anyway, the rebels have been overpowered by the Empire during a battle on the planet Hoth. Luke and R2, they are able to get away and they go to meet Yoda. They need to go and start Luke's training. And while at the same time, Han, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO find refuge at, is it called the Cloud City? Is that what it's called?
Cloud City, yes.
Cloud City, yes. Where
Old
they
Cloud
are,
City.
they're tricked and they are kidnapped, and Darth Vader uses them as kind of as bait to lure Luke away from his training to save them and then try and bring him over to the Empire.
Yeah, this is a movie that I think, true to its title, this is kind of the Empire has the upper hand throughout this movie. Right. They're constantly on the heroes' tails. They're one step ahead, it seems like, throughout. Like, the heroes, basically, this entire film are just hanging on, is just clinging on by kind of just a thread, trying not to get captured.
And I guess it's usually, like, if you ever talk about how, like, sequels are usually not better than the first one, it's usually, at least I've seen, that people will say Godfather Part 2 better than the first one and Empire Strikes Back. Whether or not you agree, it's usually taken that this is...
Empire's viewed as the best Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I would say consensus-wise.
And I think it's definitely the much more emotional one. Like, it moves all of the characters into a more emotional role without being cheesy. Like, this is where you realize Vader isn't just an evil Sith Lord, Luke isn't just a whiny kid,
Good
Han
point.
isn't just James Dean in space. And
Debatable.
well, okay.
Just kidding.
He carries a trait of that throughout all of them.
I think that's very well said, Nathan. I never really thought about that. This is where
Everyone grows up.
a lot of that emotional fleshing out kind of takes place. A lot like New Hope. I think that this movie bursts onto the scene. It sets the tone from the beginning when, like, you see Luke for 2 seconds and he gets mauled by a Yeti and captured. So, like, already you are not even 2 minutes into the movie and, like, things have gone awry and they're having to figure it out. And this is where we see Han's heart of gold show up yet again. And to me, Han Solo carries this movie. Like, this movie is more, he is the heart and soul of this movie, more so than
Look
any
at him.
other.
He's
This is
right
his
on
best movie.
the front of the poster.
He's so handsome.
Yeah, he is.
He really is. How much time between the
3
first
years.
one? Okay, 3.
Is that right? Is it 3 years in between each movie?
Oh no, like actually, like not maybe how. It was
how
filmed,
much time
how much
in the story?
Yeah,
I don't know
story.
how much time.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm not
It seems
entirely
like it's
sure
probably
either. I
like
should know
6-7 months because Luke definitely did grow up. I mean, I
He
think
grew up, but then he still had to go do the training, so
Yeah.
it couldn't have been too long.
Oh, and we'll talk about the Luke train, but I do want to talk about Han a bit more because I do think that this is the movie where he is his best Han Solo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in Return of the Jedi, as we'll see, I think he becomes a bit unrecognizable. He's just like a straight up good guy. New Hope, he's probably like the rest of the characters in New Hope, a little too much of a caricature. Like, this is where he's more nuanced and. You see at the beginning of the movie, he's still trying to deal with Jabba, right? And so I love the line where he's talking to the general and he's talking about how he has to leave and how he has a death mark on him, or whatever. The general's like, I understand a death mark's not an easy thing to live with. That's just a super tough guy line, and it just lets you know the world that kind of Han Solo's used to dealing in.
Han Solo is so charming in this movie. Even the way that the tough guy, the rivalry, I love the tension between him and Leia. It's so adorable.
It is.
And
It's that bad guy that girls always fall for.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like but he's like just enough bad guy, but also kind of like not. I don't
he'll
know.
do something every now and then. It'll be like,
you're like,
Han,
yeah.
my goodness.
He is the
Yes.
rogue and the scoundrel with the heart of gold.
Yes.
Like that's
True. I guess I hadn't thought about. I mean, that's what you said. This is the movie where he really is like that guy.
And you see mentioning I love how their relationship develops throughout, as we said in the beginning. Leia trying to make Han jealous, and Han, you can tell even Han, as much as he wants to be the cool guy, Leia's obviously in his head because he like has some emotional tantrums where he'll kind of swing and careen wildly back and forth, like he's like yelling out of nowhere just because he's upset. But so she tries to make him jealous at first, kissing Luke, but then I love when they go into the asteroid field, which is an awesome escape scene to begin with.
Yeah.
And then I just love the fact their main relationship kind of develops while they're hiding inside of a giant space worm on a giant asteroid. And they play with that dynamic that we were just talking about, the bad guy dynamic, where it's like, what do you tell her? You love a good scoundrel. You need some scoundrels in your life.
The Han Leia relationship is awesome, but also it got a lot of laughs out of me. The relationship between Han and C-3PO, they are absolutely hilarious. The two of them in this movie. He just looks at it like they're kissing and he says, "Sir, I forget what he says. I fixed the, and he turns around, he's like, thank you. Thank you very much.
And then every time C-3PO is trying to tell him that the motivator's broken and that's why the hyperdrive's not working, and he's just telling him to shut up every time. And then finally he's like, well, why didn't you tell me? Or when C-3PO tells him how to fix it, and he's like, yeah, of course. And he tells Chewie, he's like, hey, we might want to check this out. That's a really good point. So that's a lot of fun. And really, all the scenes on the Falcon are a ton of fun in this movie as you watch these characters who, how much do they kind of deal with each other in that first one? I guess, well, Han and, I'm saying it's just an odd pairing, these four, but I guess at this point in the story, people are just starting to split up. But the hyperdrive not working on the Falcon is kind of one of the main driving forces of this entire movie.
Let me see what else. I guess, and I also thought there was a lot more. The movie in general, I think, holds a lot more of an emotional punch. Like whenever you realize that they have been betrayed and that Darth Vader is there as a trap.
Right.
I thought that was very compelling as well.
Oh, Lando.
Did you have any? Okay. Well, let's talk about Lando Calrissian.
The only black man in the universe.
Yeah, I guess so. Billy D. Williams, the coolest guy in the entire Star Wars galaxy. But he is probably one of the most human characters, I think, in this entire series. Like, he is the one. Star Wars a lot of times is accused as being the character's motivations being very black or white, right? Not a lot of nuance.
I don't know. I guess maybe you're saying you don't agree with that, right?
Well, I think if you dive deep enough, you find more of that nuance.
I think this movie has a lot of nuance. In particular, I felt bad for him because it seemed like there was a part wherever he, really felt like this wasn't supposed to go this far. Like I was just kind of, you're going to help me out a little bit. You weren't going to take them away. And so I thought, and Calrissian, that's what I'm saying. Maybe contrary to like we said, Darth Vader at first seems like just a pure embodiment of evil. You come to learn that maybe there's a bit more there. Off the bat, we understand that Lando's in a weird spot. He's the leader of this people who technically operate illegally outside of the Empire, so he has to keep them safe from the Empire. And so he's like between a rock and a hard place where he doesn't want to betray his friend, but it's a bit better to betray one person and save his thousands of people that you're in charge of. So yeah, that's why I've always liked Lando, because you can understand, even though it's a decision that you hate because it leads to them getting captured, you can understand his kind of gray area motivations. And then when the deal goes too far, you see a guy who recognizes it and then who does his best to kind of rectify the sins of the past. And I also whenever he gets frozen, I haven't seen this movie in maybe like 8 years, but that's a very well constructed scene. Just the way that that kind of finalizes the way that Han and Leia feel about each other, the way that you see Lando Calrissian realize the extent of what he's done.
Right.
I think that it's a great scene.
It is, and it has one of the best improv lines of any movie ever, which, going back to the Han and Leia relationship, it was not actually in the script when she says, I love you, and he says, I know.
Oh, really?
I
had that in my notes. That was
such
perfect.
a good moment.
Yeah. I mean, that is when an actor fully understands his character better than the scriptwriter understands his character, because he knows how Han would respond in that moment.
What a good moment.
It's a super tough guy line. Okay, I want to talk a bit about Luke training with Yoda.
Yoda.
He kind of did yoga.
He did a little
yoga. It was
yoga.
like tangential. It was yoga adjacent. Is how I would describe Jedi training. But first off, let's talk a bit about Yoda. I love the puppet work from Frank Oz.
Yeah.
I think it still holds up to this day, man, which is really impressive.
I guess we'll talk about it. It makes me angry that they had to go and animate Yoda in the prequels, because it works so well.
I know.
It's so much more physical. That puppet in the 80s is so much more physical.
And it sucks because, like, saying that now, it is almost cliche because so many people have kind of lamented that same fact. But a lot of times cliches are so for a reason.
Yeah.
Because they're true. And Puppet Yoda, I think, is objectively, in my opinion at least, more enjoyable than his CGI counterpart. I like that they kind of play with the crazy wizard idea, right? Or like the angel disguised as a homeless person, where Yoda's this weird little annoying creature, and you're like, who is this guy? Like, he's almost like Jar Jar Binks level of like, what is going on here?
Yeah, he's pretty when he's like rummaging through the lunchbox and
pretty aggressive.
He's like, hey, don't do that.
Comparison.
What, Jar Jar?
Yeah.
That's true. Actually, I think that Lucas was kind of banking on being able to do the same type thing with Jar Jar, and it just never.
It didn't work.
No, it never really came to pass. But what I love about Yoda is because of the puppet work, you can see the second that he changes from the bumbling, homeless person to when he's like, now I'm a Jedi Master. His eyes kind of narrow in, and he's like, you're not ready or whatever. But I love all those scenes. I love, and this is going to show how deeply I think I've thought about this stuff. But I find Yoda. I keep saying it. But his explanation of the Force is pretty fascinating. And I think this is what really one of the more interesting story quirks of this movie. Yoda kind of basically talks about how the Force is best used without the kind of the limitation of yourself, right? You have to get rid of your preconceived notions of what's possible. Also your preconceived notions of what you're capable of. You have to kind of accept that humility. Ultimately, this is why I think that Luke training with Yoda and what he goes on to do, it is like an Icarus type of tale where usually in a movie when the main character defies orders and goes to do something, he's rewarded for it, right? And not in this movie. He ignores Yoda's advice to not go to the trap.
Right.
He decides that, he's powerful enough. I've been training. I can move rocks. I can do this and that.
Right.
I'm powerful enough. I can go save my friends. I can do this. And it's like a path to hell's paved with good intentions, right? He wants to save his friends. But in the end, he almost makes everything worse. He ignores the advice. He goes over there. He almost gets caught. The Empire almost gets everything that they want. He doesn't save Han. Lando ends up saving Leia and ends up saving him. So it was interesting to me to see him completely ignore Yoda and then not be rewarded for it. And really, the movie ends with him being like, "Man, I screwed up. I should have maybe been more passive and listened to the wisdom of Master Yoda and not been so hasty and overconfident."
I did really like also the little seedling that they put where Yoda, right before you see the last of him in this movie, that there is another one. He's not the only hope that we have left. There's still somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what is interesting about the end of this, as far as Luke believing in himself kind of over maybe the Force or where it's going, is it's almost the opposite of A New Hope, where one of the main, and we didn't even talk about this, but one of the main dynamics in A New Hope is kind of that idea of the Force versus technology. I mean, Han sets it up at the beginning of the movie, and then there at the end, Luke has the targeting computer, and he lets himself go. He doesn't believe in kind of human capabilities. He puts his full trust into the Force, lets himself go outside himself, and he hits the shot. So it was interesting to see him get a little cocky now that he had trained with Yoda. And as you'll see at the end of Jedi, I think we come all the way back around to where he learns his lesson. But Rivers, I know you said you have any questions. Do you have any questions or thoughts on
about this
Empire?
Questions or thoughts? I don't know. I liked this movie. But I think a big part of it you kind of already covered was because of Han and Leia.
Their relationship is it's one of the best. I mean, the chemistry between them is fantastic. And God, after watching Attack of the Clones, it seems even better.
Yeah, there's a deep dive in
and
quality.
it kind of and I guess then you go back into these other movies.
Yeah, okay.
So because of the way it ends.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about it. One of the biggest reveals in cinematic history.
Yeah, the I am your father line. And I watched it again. I actually sent you a picture. I was watching this with my little brother, and he
was
when
so
that scene
excited.
happens, he talked. He said something right whenever, and I lost my cool for a little bit. I had to apologize. I was like, you have to be quiet because now we have to rewind and watch this scene again.
It's because now we have to.
No, dude.
Yeah, and but no, it gives me goosebumps every time I see it. It's so well done, and I didn't realize until watching it this time that this is one of the biggest twists in movie history, and there's no flashbacks that come with it to show why this is real. No character explains it. It's not even mentioned again in the movie.
But isn't at some point, am I making this up, that someone said something about Luke being what's his face's son?
No, so he knows that he's Anakin's son, but they don't know that Anakin is Darth.
I guess we don't know that.
Yeah.
So
and I guess I just know that. So it's hard to remove
it is
myself
tough to kind of watch the movies because I knew this ending. I knew that this would happen before
because
when
that was said, I just in my mind was like, oh, I know who Anakin is.
Exactly, and that's where.
But he knows who Anakin is.
Oh yeah.
And so it was. And isn't that strange though that when they said that he didn't
They
react.
think, well, no, but they all think that because this is what everyone tells Luke is that Darth Vader killed Anakin.
So he like doesn't exist at all. Like
So they think that Anakin is dead at Darth Vader's hands. They don't realize that Darth Vader is Anakin.
But I'm saying, didn't someone say that to Darth Vader?
Say what?
That he is Anakin's son.
Yes, the Emperor is the one who ends up telling him.
So Darth knows he's Anakin.
Yes.
But there's like no response.
No, I think that's, because
I mean, it's probably intentional, but
when you get to Revenge of the Sith in Episode 3, he kneels in front of Palpatine as Anakin Skywalker, and then he says, "Rise, Lord Vader." So I mean, it is this line of demarcation where he lets go of his old humanity and he fully accepts this kind of Sith persona that's very single-minded. We're going to control the galaxy and bring order back to the galaxy.
Also, though, so now he knows that he is Luke's father.
Yeah.
But just as a movie or whatever, he knows that he has this daughter. Like, is that how? I mean.
So this may be where you're getting tripped up. Anakin doesn't actually ever know in the original prequels that his babies were born. He does not know that the twins were born. He is told that Leia and the kids all died at the end of Revenge of the Sith, and that's when he's like, no, and he freaks out.
Got it. Okay, well that clears some stuff up.
Yeah, because I too used to wonder, well, how did he not know Leia was his daughter when he originally confronted her in the first movie? Absolutely.
Well, kind of like taking it back to what you were saying though, and back to what I said earlier about watching the original one in the theater. Man, can you imagine being in the theater?
I actually, as a child, I did not know that was coming, and I remember watching it in theaters, and it was pretty awesome. It was like a mind blowing, like, what?
And it does it works so well, and you don't like usually with a twist, like in a movie like this, you will get lots of other things that show you little bits of information. It's like, of course, but you know,
right.
And then
that is true when he says it, and it's done so well.
Man.
And I'm not a big fan of Mark Hamill. I don't think he's a great actor, but he does a great job responding to that, and that whole
freaks
scene.
Out. Yeah,
oh yeah, it's just whoa. That kind of makes sense, but that really shouldn't make sense.
I like the story behind it too. Apparently, in the original script, they didn't have it. It was like they say, like, I killed your father, or I'm your father's brother. I can't remember. Like
what a complicated line.
It was James.
I'm your uncle's best friend.
Actually, the line that Hamill reacted to was not "I am your father." Like, James Earl Jones was one of the only people to actually know what the real line was. There's a little fun fact for you. That's how they kept it secret. So that I am your father, the big reveal, Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, and therefore we enter a time warp.
Yeah.
We go back in time to Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where we learn the story of a young Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, so Star Wars Phantom Menace 1999. This is where, I mean, the whole point of these prequels is that, how did Anakin become Darth Vader? That's what this is all about. So the story is that they what is it? Well, they end up getting
I get tripped up
on this story.
The scope is bigger off the bat, and a lot of people kind of position this as a negative, and I think it is in the movie because, like a lot of the prequels, I think it's in the execution where they fail.
Yeah, and go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say what they're basically doing. It's a very human story. It's very similar to when the Roman Republic kind of became the Roman Empire. They're just exploring elements of how does a functioning republic become so dysfunctional that it then becomes an empire. And this starts this whole kind of separatist movement, this splinter group that wants to cause civil war within the rebellion. It starts with this trade federation and then trying to gobble up a bigger piece of the financial pie, if you will.
You have got to think that whenever Star Wars fans went to see this movie in theaters and the first sentence on the opening crawl is about tax disputes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's got to be
taxation of the trade routes.
And I think there's a lot of, while watching these movies, I think there's a lot of stuff that happens that I think really would work on paper and you could see why it would come together. But like you said, the execution is really bad. It really doesn't deliver on the goods as far as a Star Wars movie goes. And even though I respect and I know Lucas is big on his, like, this is my vision, the fans might want something, but this is what it has to be. I respect that, but I still don't think this movie delivers as a Star Wars movie.
Very unpopular opinion. I actually really like this movie.
I do too. I think this movie's actually aged better. I think there are still elements of it that are bad, but I think this movie's aged pretty well.
I think part of it too, I mean, aside from the actors and this and that, whatever, I really do like a backstory. I like knowing how people got where they are.
Yes.
Which, I mean, you probably like even more. You like the whole, we know,
But-
you like a lead up.
But Anakin, like you said, Anakin though, getting his backstory, it's one that I love because it's something that actually has a lot of analogs in real life in terms of him being a true prodigy.
Also,
like you think about the trillions of people born in that galaxy, just one of them is
Right.
going to be some sort of super freak at everything.
I didn't remember the fact that he was like, his mom was this like virgin lady who.
Yeah,
I
see,
didn't remember
I
that
can't
part.
get on board
So
with
virgin
that.
lady, she gets pregnant.
Immaculate
she has,
conception's
yeah,
bad.
what?
I like
don't
to
remember
think
that
I
part
like
at
to think
all.
that Shmi just wasn't comfortable enough telling Qui-Gon what had actually happened. I don't
no.
buy into the
Yeah,
Immaculate Conception.
and I mean,
Wow.
I remember growing up, people saying that this was the worst movie ever made, and I don't think that's fair. I did kind of enjoy it a little bit. I think there are a
Oh,
lot.
it was fun.
I think the pod race is fun. I think Darth Maul's fun. The end fight is fun. I used to think Jar Jar Binks was kind of charming. I did
Surprised
not
Liam
like
Neeson
him.
is not on the poster.
Yeah, that is
'cause,
kind
He was
of
a big part of the movie.
Qui-Gon
Liam
Jinn's the
Neeson
man.
did a really good job as a Jedi. He was.
I
Great
liked-
job.
It was strange watching him not be in Taken.
I
like
did-
in any other role.
I did
I
really-
forgot that he was the guy.
I
in this
liked
movie.
that the feel of this movie and the feel of the prequels is very distinct from the the original
Yeah.
trilogy. Which I mean, the new movies have very much just done the original trilogy, and
People love it, and it's still good. But yeah, no, I mean, look, the same thing that drove Lucas to be creative enough to create Star Wars originally drove him to do a lot of things that people hated in terms of trying to push the boundaries with CGI and do something new and have a larger scope. And like, and for better or for worse, it's what he decided to do. And like, I think this has aged a bit better. But so you have Anakin. He is like this prodigy, and what I love is that you see the guy that you see in New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, this Darth Vader character, who basically is like the right-hand man to the ruler of the galaxy. He came from like super humble beginnings. And a lot of people might say, oh, well, this is real. This is unrealistic. You can't go from being a slave to the to the emperor of the galaxy. But the thing is, this has happened like on planet Earth, and a lot of people don't realize
Jesus.
Well, yeah, okay,
Like
no
Jesus.
joke on Jesus. But the thing about
Immaculate Conception.
there's a
That's
Roman
what- yeah,
emperor,
exactly.
exactly right. But there's a Roman emperor Justinian. This dude was a peasant when he was born. He ends up working his way. He's one of the greatest emperors of all time. Genghis Khan, before he took over the world, had gotten his wife stolen from him. He was penniless, had nothing to his name. He later went on to rule the world. So this is a story that reminds me, at least, that like some might say, oh, it's crazy. That would never happen. Look, truth is stranger than fiction. And this is one of those stories about someone who came from nothing and ends up having a massive impact on everything.
I definitely think that on paper, this is a really good story. I think as far as the direction goes, as far as the casting goes, the execution, I think, is nowhere near the level of the original Star Wars movies. I think that he should have written the story and gotten other directors and writers in to do it, because while what Anakin's story I think is good for the backstory, which would be tough to pull off, I find him really annoying. I find the kid incredibly annoying.
See, I really liked the kid, and I usually find
not
everyone
good.
annoying.
Yeah, so you thought, see,
I
okay,
thought
but
the kid was cute.
I think he's cute. I like
He
him.
is
I
cute.
didn't find him annoying. I found him like.
I definitely missed
him
him
likable.
in the second one.
Can I ask a question? And this is maybe just me
Yeah.
thinking of how we interpreted characters. Is Yoda kind of an asshole?
He is. He is not very wise
I
in this
don't
movie.
like
I didn't like him
him
very
in
much
this
in
movie.
these.
Well, now you get to one of the interesting things about Yoda kind of throughout the prequels is, for as wise as we think he is, he's actually the guy who's in charge while everything goes wrong. Like, he's the leader who's being manipulated by Palpatine. He's the leader when the Jedi Order has its downfall. Like, so technically, he's kind of getting played the entire time.
Right.
Yeah, he is.
That said,
But that's not the
Jedi
but that's
are
not the
kind
Yoda
of assholes.
that we
though.
like are thinking about. You know, we get this little old Yoda, and
This-
then all of a sudden you
Well, we
throw
meet
this
Yoda.
Yoda,
we
in
meet
my
Yoda.
face. I don't like him.
We meet a very humble Yoda.
Yeah.
He's been living in Dagobah, knowing that he was in charge when everything went wrong.
That's
that
true.
he himself had fallen victim to the hubris that he later warns Luke about. So I think that's actually I don't know if that's by design, but I think it works for that reason. If you take Yoda's overall experiences,
Didn't love him.
But this dude, that's the thing. Jedi's are assholes.
For sure, but
Like, you're not allowed to love. They're very emotionless.
maybe it's good that we watched it this way. I mean, I'm just so used to thinking of Yoda as just this very lovable whatever. But that's true.
No, but I mean, this is
He was very humbled and
Did y'all also feel like I don't know what they're called. The people at the beginning, what are the people with the eyes? The very like the black, the ones that are
the bad guys.
Yes, the bad guys.
The Newt Gunroy, the Trade Federation.
Yeah,
those
guys.
are like the only Asian characters because those are like they're the only Asian characters because they've got those accents.
for
Also,
sure.
can we talk about?
And then Jar Jar Binks is also a little bit iffy.
It's a little problematic.
Yeah.
A little like weird Jamaican tangent.
Yeah.
Like,
Two questions I have about these guys, the bad guys, whatever
Trade Federation.
Trade Federation.
That's what we'll call them.
Okay, so they see this Darth
Sidious.
Hologram?
yeah, but the
Darth
hologram,
Sidious.
the hologram. Okay, they never put two and two together who this guy is.
That's what I did find that
Which
weird
is
when
no
a
one
watching
little
does.
weird.
No one
like
does.
context clues, buddies.
No one.
Like-
Well, I do think
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I
His
didn't
voice,
think that
you
took
can see half
too
his
long
face.
to put together.
I think
Like-
that you always have to keep in mind that when we see these things, we are operating from the mindset of actually knowing who he is the entire time. Versus if you knew the politician, Chancellor Palpatine, Senator Palpatine, like he doesn't always give off this vibe of being very competent or like overly competent. Like I don't think that you would necessarily think that, oh, this is the most evil man in the galaxy who's manipulating
Right.
the entire galaxy
Okay.
into an all-out
So
spending
let's
war.
say you don't get it. But then there's several moments where he instructs them to do something, where they get the hologram goes away and they've got to go do these things,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oof, we don't need to do these things." Like, "Oof, that seems like a bad idea." And so it's like the whole time they regret every thing that they do.
Well, that's what happens when you get into bed with a strong man, right? Like when you get into bed with a gangster or something, and they're telling you like
Right.
you have to go.
They feel trapped.
Yeah, now you're already pot committed at
Right.
that point. So I mean, he had some sort of power over them, obviously. But really, Palpatine is fascinating to me because I enjoy watching him. And this goes back to what you said, Nathan. I don't think this is well executed on screen, but through stuff like the Clone Wars cartoons and other things, I enjoy
Clone Wars are
Palpatine working his way through the political ranks and just manipulating every single side along the way.
Yeah, and I think I do like that the prequels operate on a deeper level than just more Star Wars. It does help build the galaxy in a more believable way because the war was started in the way that any war is started. It's usually started with pretty boring stuff.
Well, how do you? Yeah, exactly. And how do you make a republic become a dictatorship? In ancient Rome, when would they declare a dictator? It was when they were militarily threatened, when things were bad, back against the wall. They needed to streamline the decision-making process. We're going to put one person in power. And those dictators, like a Sulla, didn't always give that power up, as we're going to find out. But that's what I love about Palpatine. How do you get a entire galaxy to fight each other? You create a war that somehow involves robots on one side and clone soldiers on the other, and then just drags everybody else into it. Like, really, you shouldn't even have enough coordinated troops to be able to effect a war like that, yet he creates two armies out of nothing to fight to then become the emperor of the galaxy. That's some impressive footwork.
So
by
just
Palpatine.
y'all weren't very bored when watching this movie?
No,
not Phantom
this
Menace.
one no.
Okay, all right. Well, do y'all want to go on to the
Yeah.
to
Hold on,
attack?
I got to talk about the
Okay,
pod
go
race
ahead,
real
go
quick.
ahead. The pod race
holds
is great.
up
The
to
pod
this
race
day.
is
I like
great.
the pod race.
I think the pod race is a great example of 90s special effects that still like really work
Right.
nowadays. I think that the Gungan battle at the end is the complete opposite.
See, I like the Gungan battle too. I kind of enjoyed that.
Oh man, see, to me, I didn't because it had no impact. Like the Gungans lost, but then they won because, well, Anakin's joyride, which is probably look. That's where the movie falls.
Joyride was.
That's where it falls apart for me. Is at the end. Look, they got very ambitious, right? 4 big dueling action scenes. You had Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul. The Queen's secret forces raid on the palace. You had the battle between the Gungans, and then you had Anakin's joyride. The only one out of those that's good is the duel. All the other ones are just very. I mean, Anakin's joyride, especially. Why? It's like, even with me, with all the talking prodigies that we just went through, it's hard to imagine the kid being that successful as a fighter pilot when his first thing when he got control of the ship was like, oh, spinning's cool. Or like, oh,
But he's
spinning's a
still
good trick.
Which he's supposed to be 9 in these movies. He looks
Yeah.
way younger than 9.
Yeah, it's true. He does seem a little. Is that
He's supposed to be 9, yeah.
years old. Ooh, Padme.
Oh no.
I didn't think.
It's problematic. That speaking of problematic, the scenes with Padme and the little kid Anakin in this movie are weirder knowing where their relationship ends up.
It is weird.
But look, he's got mom issues, obviously.
He does.
So if there's anybody that's going to fall for an older woman in a motherly type of role, it's going to be Anakin.
She very much does mom him.
And as we'll see, his mom issues come to a head in this next video. Oh
Are you an angel?
Chill out. Okay, the dialogue.
Whatever, that would work on me.
No one said the dialogue was good, okay?
No, but the thing is, there's bad dialogue, and then is anyone going to say anything that sounds human?
Well, okay. Now that might be a good point to transition into Attack of the Clones.
This is where it gets.
This movie I did not like as much.
All right, so Attack of the Clones 2002. Once again, we've got George Lucas writing and directing all by himself. And it's 10 years later. Anakin is now an apprentice of Obi-Wan. And Anakin is battling the very thing that Yoda warned them about. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Yeah.
Oh, that was excellent.
He's frustrated at Obi-Wan. He feels like Obi-Wan is holding him back. He's frustrated at the Council. He feels that he could be a better Jedi. He could be a Jedi faster. And they're assigned to protect Padme after an assassination attempt. And then Anakin and Obi-Wan split because Anakin has to go with Padme to protect her, and he starts falling in love with her. And then he starts becoming haunted by visions of his mother being in danger, while Obi-Wan he's investigating this assassination attempt, which brings him to find out that there is a clone army.
It's a busy movie.
So much going on.
It's a busy movie.
Yeah, it is a busy movie, but I also felt like not that much happened, or at least nothing that interesting happened. It felt like a Netflix episode. Like it could have been like a 60 or 45-minute episode.
This is where Anakin starts to remind me of Luke.
Yeah, and in a worse way.
Yeah, in the worst way. Like
well,
with his
it would have been
whininess.
around the same age, right?
Yeah, right. And so with their whininess.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can do whatever I want to do.
Very temperamental. No, Anakin is you see that immaturity.
Creepy with Padme. He's really creepy.
He's creepy with her, and it's still kind of surprising that it all works out because there's so many moments where she's like, "You got to calm down," and
stop looking at me like this.
Well, not
it's
even
making
that.
me uncomfortable.
She seems so much more mature than him.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. How about when they're
Anakin,
still
you've got to calm down, and it's like, what? How can I calm down? They're not treating me fair.
That's exactly the thing. I can't deal with it.
That's really good. No, it's I mean, he shows how immature he is when they're talking about politics, and he's like, everybody should get together and talk it out. And she's like, yeah, it's what we do. People don't agree. And he's like, well, everybody should be made to agree. And so, yeah, but you also see the seed starting to be planted as to how he turns into Darth Vader. He has a very black and white mindset.
That's one. This movie in particular is a lot. Not a lot happens. A lot of people have conversations, which never happens in the other Star Wars movies. Stuff actually happens. And I saw there was a cute quote from Ewan McGregor who said that his job in this movie was to walk into rooms and look up. He said that was his job in this movie.
I find Ewan McGregor's story to be the most interesting part of this whole movie, where you're finding out about this secret deal with a Jedi who created a clone army for the Republic years ahead of time, which then speaks to, this plan has been in the making way longer than they realize, and you figure out you have the battle between Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, and really the action in this movie is solid throughout. I actually enjoyed it. I like the assassin chase scene.
That was that was a really good choice.
Everything on what's the planet with all the bugs? Mustafar, I believe. I'm not entirely sure.
I'm not good with the planet names.
That whole escape scene where they're going through the factory and then they're chained up about to be executed.
Yeah,
they get out. That's all good. The Obi-Wan fight scene's good. So the action's solid throughout. It's the in-between moments that aren't. And this movie, more than any other, to me, highlights what the theme of this has kind of been for the prequels, which is a solid story with a complete lack of execution. Because if you had written those two characters to be more likable like you did in Empire with Han and Leia, where you loved that relationship and you were cheering for that relationship,
you just
this
weren't
whole movie
cheering
could
for
have
this.
worked. No, you didn't care about it because it didn't feel real.
It
felt like
was
someone
too
who
much.
just read Shakespeare in high school for the first time and was trying to write Shakespearean
fact that
dialogue.
Hank loved her too much, too quick.
One thing he said, he told Padme, I don't like the sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating. It gets everywhere. Not like here everything is soft and smooth. And he says that while he's rubbing Padme's arm, and she looks at him and she looks like she hates him. She looks like she's annoyed. But in the next scene, they're running through the field.
Well, look, Padme, let's not let her off the hook. She has serious issues. So he comes back and tells you that he murdered an entire village of women and children and sentient beings. And she's like, oh, it's okay. Come here.
Is that how she said it?
It's
Just
gonna
like
be.
that?
It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be. I still love you.
If it did, it would not have been worse if she had done that.
She doesn't even give him. Like she
Just be
doesn't-
like, whoa, what?
Yeah, she
What
does,
did you
she
do?
doesn't even
There was
seem
not like a
taken
second
aback
thought,
for
yeah.
a second. She is all in on it. So really, I mean, look, poor execution. But I do think
And
the story of the creation of the secret clone army and how then with the rise of the droid army and the separatist movement getting stronger and stronger, that you see Jar Jar Binks of all people end up being the one
That's
to seed emperor to
Freaking
seed
Jar Jar Binks.
dictatorial.
Yeah, that
We
was
haven't really
really-
talked about him,
to
but whatever.
Palpatine.
You can imagine how I feel about him.
I think it's incredible how much they leaned into Jar Jar Binks in that first movie, man.
Just leaned in.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was clearly he was supposed to be like the new C-3PO, but
He didn't-
that
he was
failed
not.
big time.
One of the best parts is at the very beginning when you first see Jar Jar, Qui-Gon Jinn saves him, and he's like, "Oh, you saved my life, Misa, your humble servant." And
Yeah.
he's like, "That won't be necessary." And it's like, oh man, if only they knew how like unnecessary it really would be.
And then
It
that
would have
would
been
have been
so
great,
great
if
if
they
they would have just been like, all right then.
recut it. Jar Jar just goes, "Well, okay," and then he
Okay,
walks away.
Lisa, see you later.
You do a good Jar Jar.
Yeah, you just got to be like Jamaican racist. I think it's incredible how much they leaned into Jar Jar Binks in that first movie, man.
Just leaned in.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it was clearly he was supposed to be like the new C-3PO, but
He didn't-
that
he was
failed
not.
big time.
One of the best parts is at the very beginning when you first see Jar Jar, Qui-Gon Jinn saves him, and he's like, "Oh, you saved my life, Misa, your humble servant." And
Yeah.
he's like, "That won't be necessary." And it's like, oh man, if only
only-
they knew how like unnecessary it really would be.
And then
It would
that
have
would
been
have been
so
great,
great
if
if
they
they would have just been like, all right
had
then.
recut it. Jar Jar just goes, "Well, okay," and then he
Okay,
walks away.
Lisa, see you later.
You do a good Jar Jar.
Yeah, you just got to be like Jamaican racist. That's just getting that headspace, and you should be good to go.
But and I think this movie. I mean, I feel like Phantom Menace does as well, and even Revenge of the Sith. Although I think Revenge of the Sith is definitely the better by a long way. But you know, the prequels. The prequels are there to show us where Darth Vader came from, how this arc. And I think, and I kind of feel like the Alien movies right now are doing the same thing, which I think is dangerous to do because Darth Vader is so good in the original trilogy that to do a backstory is risky. And this movie, and I think this is the worst because this completely undermines how scary and how sad Darth Vader's character
'Cause
is
you
in the
think of
original
this
trilogy.
guy now.
Yeah, I don't care.
Whiny Hayden
of course,
Christensen is
of course
what
he's going to be.
is
He just
who Darth
seems like
Vader
a
is.
sexually frustrated young man
Yeah,
with a
for
lightsaber.
sure.
It's
For
not.
sure.
It's not. Not. You know, it's not. You're not wrong. But here's where I get to that. The story, if done better, if executed better on film, would have been good. Because when you think about in terms of something that might turn somebody to evil, or just show that they have a problem controlling the rays, controlling Timber, when his mother is killed, to then go on a rampage and murder all these people, then you try to like. It could have been so much more effective in him and Padme trying to work through what that means. Him dealing with the guilt. Do I tell on myself? You know, do I carry this with me forward as I try to be a good guy, try to be a Jedi? And I feel like it could have been eaten inside of him. Instead, you never really get that sense that he cares too much about killing all those people. And then in the third, he just like starts killing younglings, kind of 0 to 100 again. So
There's no.
They don't always sell it. They don't always sell the turn.
I would be interested to see who the top three were when George Lucas was like, it's going to come down to these three to be Anakin. Like, who were the two that were worse than this guy?
And I always wonder, though, because, look, Natalie Portman is a great actress.
Such a good actress.
I thought she did way better in this than in Phantom Menace.
I thought she did okay.
But so that's the problem. We know she's better than an okay actor.
Right.
So
even before this, it's not like this was one of her first whatever.
But she was in The Professional.
She was in a bunch of stuff.
She was
before
incredible
this.
in that. It's like
She
a
was in Heat.
13-year-old.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
She was in Heat as
I mean, she was
a
in
kid.
some stuff, and she was good. And so this was a little disappointing.
Yeah, and that's where, though, I think you get to, it's almost like in sports, like a coach to player analogy.
But also,
I don't think she's always put in the best position to succeed. And so if you have an actress who's really good like her and they make her average, then if you have an actor like Hayden Christensen who's maybe more in the average range, that sort of dialogue is going and direction is going to make him into the bad.
But I don't even think Marlon Brando could have made some of these lines.
No, exactly.
Play
No,
well.
no, they
That
are
sand line that you read earlier.
Yeah.
Dude,
that was
all
incredible.
of the romantic fluff in the middle is so wooden and cringeworthy, and it really does read, like I said, like junior high Shakespeare fan fiction. Like it's weird. I think you said it best, Nate. It's inhuman.
Yeah,
The
which is
dialogue
weird
is
because
literally
the original,
inhuman.
But yeah, because especially the relationship between Han and Leia, that one felt so real. Just like after 2 minutes of hearing them talk, and I don't know, it's just weird. He should not have been at the head of these movies. I don't think they did a good job taking these movies away from him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wonder if Hayden Christensen will ever show up in Star Wars future. I think it's been long enough where they bring him back, where you find some way of getting him in one of these new movies. I don't know if it's a flashback to an Anakin scene.
I like to see Ewan McGregor in the new ones.
I would too. I mean, I don't really want them to make an Obi-Wan movie because I feel like it's time for them to branch out a bit in the Star Wars universe. But Ewan McGregor, so I can't believe that we could talk about 2 episodes of prequels without mentioning him. He is hands down the best part of these movies.
I'm sorry,
I
who?
think we can
Ewan
all-
McGregor?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The
yeah.
same way
I thought
that
you were going to
Harrison-
disagree. I was
Yeah,
going to say,
no.
okay.
The same way that Harrison Ford a lot of times takes over 4 and 5, especially 5. Ewan McGregor really shines in these, and
Yes.
especially this one.
Maybe we just, because we take for granted that he was so good, he was like the only thing that really was.
Okay, so what?
Decent
I
in
like
this
breathed
movie.
a sigh of fresh air whenever he walked into the
See,
room.
I thought the action was cool though. I like the escape scene, and then you have the with the kind of big. You get your first big scale battles at the end with the clones and the droids going at it. What did you think about the lightsaber fight scenes at the end, where you had I know Yoda bebopping and bimbling, jumping and flipping all around is a little controversial.
I've always found the ending of this movie to be really underwhelming. Like whenever Yoda says, the Clone War has begun, like that's pretty good. But I kind of felt, I feel like this scene wherever Yoda and him are fighting is somewhat underwhelming. I think playing this level in Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a lot more suspenseful than.
I as a child, I really loved those scenes. It doesn't really hold up as much anymore. I didn't love it. I think Yoda is best in his older, humbled, old man, kind of wise
I don't like new
sage.
Yoda. Or young Yoda.
Yeah, no, young Yoda is not. He's not all that.
I could live without him.
And Anakin gets his hand cut off, which is a Skywalker tradition.
Yeah.
By who? Look, Christopher Lee.
Is it his
also
hand or his
excellent
arm?
Yeah,
as
Christopher
Count
Lee did a
Dooku.
good
His
job.
arm.
Dooku.
Yeah, it's his whole arm.
Whole arm.
But I really enjoyed Christopher Lee, and as we'll see next episode, they will be running into each other.
Yeah, I'm
again
excited
sometime.
to watch. I might even watch Revenge of the Sith tonight because that movie is way better than any of these. And maybe I shouldn't say anything.
So you're a movie guy. Did you catch the Warwick Davis cameo in the prequels?
No.
Of course, Warwick Davis of Willow fame, and what else is Warwick Davis?
Okay, all right. I guess I did not know his name, but yes,
The little man.
Yes.
He's in the pod race.
Yes.
He's in the pod race crowd for all of you Willow fans. You ever seen Willow? It's a Lucas. It's an old Lucas fantasy movie from the '80s. It's not.
Oh, perfect.
It's not.
I'll look into that.
It's not the best movie. Oh, okay. Any final thoughts on these movies as we close up this first of 2 Star Wars episodes on Real Friends?
I'm excited to watch the rest. I will say, I think this order we're watching, the Machete order or whatever, would probably be a lot more effective had I never seen any of the movies.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe,
but I do think that can be said. Like, I think just the movies in
for sure.
general would be more effective.
I think this would be a really, really a great way to watch them if
That's
you've
true,
never
like, if you've
seen any
yeah.
of them. That's what I mean. No, I can watch them in this order and it's still great. It's fine. But I think it would be really powerful had I not ever
I
seen
agree.
any of them.
I agree. I think.
So if you haven't seen them, this is a really good order to watch.
Yeah, I think, and I think I think it's clear that 4 and 5 are better movies than the other 2. I think that 1's a bit better than a lot of you out there listening probably remember.
But I'm amazed that the
2.
general consensus is that 1 is worse than 2 because 2
That's not true.
is so
Yeah,
Not true.
boring.
So a lot of people will actually say that the true Machete order, you should take 1 completely out of it, which I vehemently disagree with. I think the
Why would you do that?
scene where Darth Vader is in the originals and then seeing this cute little boy, I think that kind of dichotomy is pretty effective.
It really wouldn't take anything away, though. I mean,
So that's their argument, is that episode 1 actually adds nothing to the story beyond background that you don't necessarily need.
right? You could just jump in.
Yeah.
The fan edit of Phantom Menace, which is like half an hour shorter, is actually not bad. It's pretty good.
I've definitely heard that. Dude, Darth Maul. I gotta mention Darth Maul. We didn't even talk about him. As far as bad guys
That's a great
go,
scene.
He's one of the best. I love the fact, and there's a famous Reddit post that pointed this out. I thought it was hilarious, but how like Maul and Qui-Gon they keep it so real that they don't even say a word to each other. I mean, Maul out of nowhere,
Yeah.
they've never seen each other, and Maul out of nowhere rides up, just jumps off his motorcycle, which like goes careening off a cliff, and they just start brawling. They're just at each other, and no words. Really, that is Darth Maul kind of throughout that movie. He's just a silent.
Like very silent. And
Oh yes, a
he
silent
seemed pretty
assassin.
like small. Maybe I
He's
remember
like a
this
badass
scene.
martial artist
I remember
guy.
this scene where he was walking or whatever, next to the bad guys again, the tattoo
Palpatine,
people, whatever.
the Trade Federation.
He's like walking next to
Didn't do
whatever
it.
they are.
No, it's not you. It's the movie. It really
Whatever
is.
they are.
You can't have your main bad guys be a trade federation that's trying to exploit overly taxed routes for like a larger piece of the profits.
So he's walking next to them, and they're so much taller than him. And so
Yeah.
then I'm kind of like, wait a minute.
Yeah, but
Maybe you're not
but
as
what if I told
badass
you
as I think you are.
that his lightsaber had a second side? That he had two
Oh,
lightsabers.
then maybe I'd
in
be
one
back
I
on
was
board.
I was pretty freaked out whenever he fell, and that lightsaber almost fell on top of him. Like I'd be scared carrying that thing around. Well, so we had said that we like Phantom Menace more than Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
What do y'all like? New Hope or?
So for
Empire
me,
Strikes Back more.
I know this is unpopular because Empire is the traditional favorite. For me, A New Hope's always been my favorite, and it still is. I think I'm a sucker for origin stories. Like Harry Potter and Sorcerer's Stone is still my favorite in that series as far as a book and a movie goes. I love. It's what you said earlier. That is, and even if the first one maybe isn't written or executed as well as the second one, it is intoxicating. And it's highlighted by a scene that I have to mention before we close up because it's one of my favorite scenes in any movie that I've ever seen, which is, because I remember it like shocked me as a kid, which is in the Millennium Falcon when they escape off of, they escape, what's Luke's home planet? Tatooine. They escape off of Tatooine and they're just chilling. They're just talking. Luke's doing a little bit of training. The droids are playing chess with the Wookiee. Han's kind of chilling, watching everything that's going on, but they're just talking. And it's like the mundanity. They're in a spaceship and they've got like all these fantastic creatures and weird stuff going on, but they're all treating it just like you're on a cross-country drive, right? Like, and that for me.
Space Cowboys.
Yes. As a
Yeah.
child, that to me really drove that home. And that's when I started to become like intoxicated with everything that world had to offer. So I'm still about A New Hope. I think it's like a theme park ride, a ton of fun. And I think it's the best singular movie of the bunch. Or maybe so far out of these four.
I'd probably go with Empire Strikes Back just
Yeah.
because. And no, I mean they're both great. I mean they changed the way movies are made and the way we watch movies. But between the two, I would go for Empire.
I'd
more.
say Empire.
Yeah. And look,
You
that
lose,
is
T-Bob.
that is by far
Oh, yeah.
Empire seems to be everybody's favorite Star Wars movie. So that is our episode 1 of Star Wars Real Friends. We talked 4, 5, 1, and 2 coming up in 2 weeks ahead of the debut of Last Jedi. We will watch episodes 3, 6, and 7. This should be fascinating for a couple of reasons. We're going to close off 2 trilogies and start a new one. We are going to see all 3 different eras of Star Wars filmmaking in one episode. And this might be the one time coming up in this next episode where we'll see how we end up feeling. But I'm going to go ahead and guess that the prequel might actually outshine the original trilogy ending in here.
That's
as far
bold.
as
Oh,
Revenge
you
of the
mean
Sith
Muppets
versus,
in space?
Sith versus Jedi.
That's bold.
We'll talk about it, Jedi, man. I got
No
props
Rogue-
to Jedi, but no spoilers. We'll
No
talk about
Rogue
it next
One though,
time.
right?
No Rogue One in this
Right,
list.
okay.
And the reason being, if people want to know, that is technically in the Star Wars stories department. It is not a part of the core Skywalker saga, though the best thing that Rogue One does, in my opinion, is actually strengthen A New Hope.
Yeah.
It makes A New Hope and the
It does.
entire original trilogy better. So check that out on your own time. Next up, though, it's 3, it's 6, it's 7.